That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about the American Society of Magical Negroes, the directorial debut of Kobi Libii, which premiered at the 2024 Sundance Film Festival. It is being released courtesy of Focus Features on March 15th, 2024.
Directorial debut. What is this film about? A young man, Aren, is recruited into a secret society of magical black people who dedicate their lives to a cause of utmost importance, making white people's lives easier. What is your pull quote?
Almost shockingly genteel, despite the discomfort courted by its title, this promising satire placates instead of provoking.
Mine. Ironically, a film about making white people comfortable made me uncomfortable. Yeah, I wasn't feeling this one.
There are a lot of interesting ideas. This is something that needed to be razor sharp to work. This should have felt like Spike Lee's Bamboozled to me.
I wrote down that it feels like Men in Black mixed with Driving Miss Daisy, but cornier. Also, you know, David Alan Grier is the only thing about this movie that I enjoyed. And stuff they were doing on In Living Color 30 years ago feels more provocative and satirical than this.
Yeah, strangely, it has the same DP, Doug Emmett, as Sorry to Bother You from Boots Riley from 2018. And that film is something that is speaking to themes and motifs this one is trying to, but just falls short of.
So what is it about? Justice Smith plays a guy named Aren, the most meek, pitiful little thing you've ever seen. And one day he's leaving an art show because he's a sculptor. He makes yarn sculptures, and his presentation does not go well. One day he's leaving. He's almost the victim of what you might consider a hate crime when it's stopped by David Alan Grier, who Aren, Justice's character, had met at the art show. David Alan Grier was a bartender. And he de-escalates the situation and tells Aren, I have a job I think you'd be great at. Let's go now. You can like check it out. And he takes him to this society where they're doing like their orientation meeting. And he very quickly becomes a member of the society. And we can elaborate later, but basically their mission is they're saying that the most dangerous thing in the world is an uncomfortable white person. So their job is to make white people comfortable, which is very promising.
Yeah.
But we see that Aren is paired with this white guy named Jason, who works for a company called Meatbox, which is like Facebook. And we're told that each magical Negro, their job is to figure out what the white person wants to make them happy. And each magical Negro has like a meter that's labeled white tears, where they can see when a white person is in distress. So with that in mind and with magical powers at hand, they can solve white people's problems.
And they're monitoring every white person in America.
So Jason's problem is that he wants to like be promoted within his company, because right now he's just like a graphic designer, I guess.
A boatswain.
And the company he works for is kind of like Trader Joe's, where every position is like...
They have these nautical
themed. But so he wants to be like the CEO of this company, but he also wants to develop a romance with his coworker, Lizzie. But the main conflict for Aren's character seems like the only conflict seems to be that he has fallen in love with Lizzie, which feels like it comes out of nowhere. So he is also told, Aren, that if you don't follow the rules, if your #1 priority is to not make your white person happy, all of us in the society will lose our magical powers. So it is of grave importance that you don't ever stray from the mission. But this fool's like, well, I'm in love with Lizzie. So at the 11th hour, when his white person is about to get the two things he wants.
Well,
he
thinks he is.
This is not very well written, I don't think, whatever. At the 11th hour, Aren decides to just let it all out and basically say what's been on his mind, which is that it all culminates in him saying, in 27 years, this is the first time I've realized I deserve to be alive. The monologue he gives, the rant he goes on, I feel was written for a different actor maybe, because Justice Smith does not embody the words coming out of this. he keeps saying he's afraid as a black man to be out in these streets, and I just don't. The essence I get from him is that people just see right through him.
That monologue is contradictory to everything we've seen before about this character seeming, before he's part of this magical society, invisible to all those around him.
That's right. But to finish the movie, to finish the story, he does end up taking Lizzie with his magical powers to New York, like the Empire State Building, because that has some significance from earlier in the film. But then he leaves her because he gets taken back to the society. And the president of the society, played by Nicole Byer,
Dee Dee,
she strips him of his powers. So...
which is very Tu Wong Fu power stripping.
And then it's very Men in Black in that whenever you get kicked out of the society, your memory's erased. But for some reason, all the other society members are like, actually, we don't need our magic. We can make white people happy without magic. And I guess that's the moral of the story. And then Lizzie and Aren walk off into the sunset. And the final gag is that we see that Lizzie, his little girlfriend, is part of her own society. The Society of Supportive Wives and Girlfriends, acronym SOSWAG. Yeah, this was corny, confusing.
It's trying to be cute, but the subject matter in and of itself is not cute. So I think that's where it's making a mistake, being a PG-13 satire about something that, you know, is really traumatic, actually. And it's not going into... And the director, I've listened to interviews speaking out of Sundance about the need for stories dealing with the elusive nature of systemic racism. But this is not that.
No.
This is not the necessary way to do that, I feel. And because we're also completely sidestepping the notion of colorism, which is the casting of Justice Smith, I think would have been a really interesting way to showcase how this archaic society, because he calls out how your name is archaic, shouldn't it be the Magical Society of Black People? You are doomed to failure because working in these old ways is now only harming us, because what you're doing, all these magical Negroes are basically Uncle Toms.
Well, there's so much I didn't like. So, yes, Justice Smith is... The words coming out of his mouth make it seem like, as a black man, he is in danger walking outside of his home. Like, he says that. But then what we see, as you already mentioned, is that people just don't even acknowledge him. Like, he's invisible to everyone. So much so that that's why David Alan Grier's character recruits him. Because he has learned how to just always be sorry and stay out of the way. So it does not fit. Then,
there are profound moments in these conversations. It just doesn't really fit, because that's at the point where David Alan Grier is telling him, like, don't you experience that every day? And that's where Aren starts saying, like, yeah, but it just doesn't escalate. Speaking to how we've kind of normalized certain things that shouldn't be normal. But again, we've shown that is not really his experience.
I think that, speaking to the elusive nature of systemic racism, I'm reminded of my favorite comedian, Patrice O'Neal, talking about the new racism. And I think, you know, he passed in 2011, but I think Patrice's take on this subject feels so much more provocative and edgy than this film 12 years later. But I think what's missing is that we see the society... I also think Nicole Byer's miscast as the president, because she seems too young to not recognize that we need to evolve. Also, all of the other black people who have been recruited, they are fashioned to almost seem like they're from like the 1950s. Mm-hmm. But what's missing is like the old way in which black people had to handle white people, which was relevant and necessary at that time.
For survival.
For survival, and how that's changed. Because David Alan Grier's character tells a story about how his father was spit on by a white man while shining his shoes, and that his father had to just smile and take it, or he wouldn't have made it home that night. And that's a real, like, that felt real. But then for what's happening today to Aren, it's like, and what we're witnessing doesn't feel like there's that level of danger. And so what are we trying to accomplish? I don't understand, like, so for this Jason character, why do we care if he's happy? What power does he have? He's a graphic designer at a... He
doesn't have any power over black people, so why isn't this society made sure to target the fretful white people that have some kind of power.
Police
control.
officers, district attorneys, judges, politicians, because the other white person we see being like a client is a farmer.
Why?
Why? Who cares if that farmer is unhappy?
There is a bit with the police officer that does make sense, but that's also a really awkward scene because this fretful white man is upset that he's aging and can't be seen as attractive anymore. So David Allen Greer is like, come to this club. What?
Yeah. Like, it was promising at first because I'm like, oh, a cop, like, perfect choice.
Yeah.
But then it's like his issues have nothing to do with black people. And so it's like this presumption that, oh, he's white, so he's going to be I don't understand the connection. Like, it's just too easy to say, oh, if white people are unhappy, they're dangerous.
And why do if we're going to bother wasting some person's energy on Jason, it should be to winnow out where is his racism and where are we going to get him to admit that he is.
I really do think that the aspect of colorism not being addressed is really problematic. Because I feel like if you look like Bryant Gumbel, your experience as a black person...
You're talking about the director?
Well, and Justice is very different. Or even me, like, compared to, like, if I look like Trevante Rhodes, my experience as a black man, also, I'm, like, a more effeminate, like, I'm not a very masculine man, and so the way I present is probably less threatening. And then, like, I feel like I'm more threatening than Justice Smith. He's super tiny. The character is very meek. His posture, like, he hunches over. Ain't nobody afraid of him. Like,
that said, I do
no white people are threatened by him.
I do like moments with Justice Smith in this, and I think he actually has decent chemistry with Lizzie, played by Annalise Bogan. It just seems like I wanted to transport them into a completely different movie.
Okay, I agree with that. I feel like those two would have worked well in like a rom-com.
Somewhere, because the meet cute is very much like that Sydney Sweeney movie with
Anyone But You.
Glenn Powell, where the spilling of coffee, ha ha ha. That felt standard in a way, but it's like, oh, they had a rapport, but it just doesn't fit in the larger scheme here. Like, why do I give an F about these people?
It's like the film is afraid to actually like get in there and talk about like real like contemporary issues.
Because they're okay. So Rupert Friend is Mick, who is the head of the CEO of Meatbox, right? And at the end, when he is giving his introductory speech, because Meatbox has had a PR nightmare because it seems that their technology doesn't recognize...
the facial recognition technology doesn't recognize black people, and the entire country of Ghana couldn't log in. So now there's a scandal, and then the CEO, Mick, is like very culturally insensitive.
So Rupert Friend is giving this speech, but he makes some comment about how he doesn't like to lose and how he just lost out on a bid for a first edition of The Fountainhead. And I find that it's like the writer-director is having these interesting crumbs he's throwing in there, because The Fountainhead's written by Ayn Rand, of course, who is the founder of objectivism. And one of the tenets of objectivism is the proper moral purpose of one's own life is the pursuit of one's own happiness. And so we have this character that is arguably a proponent of that school of thought in the midst of this American society of magical Negroes. And it's like, the juxtaposition is not played with at all. No.
Well, and then so much was needed in that regard, but instead we get like 3 or 4 scenes involving crotch grabbing that I just felt like, why are we... Because the magical Negroes have powers, and so we see that one of the... Because there's like a trainer. Mm-hmm. I will say, I think the production design is cool because they almost make it sort of like a Harry Potter type world in which they're training. And the instructor uses magic to show like examples, which I'll get to it. But anyway, she shows an example of someone from like the 1930s, or 1940s, pleasing his client who feels inadequate as a man, like he has performance issues. And we see his magical Negro grab his crotch and give him the power of blood flow. I don't know.
But what's so morbid about that is that black man is dead man walking. He's on the way to the electric chair.
Right.
Like Michael Clark Duncan in Green Mile.
Yes. But then we see that again with another magical Negro in modern time. But it's during the moment when everyone's power goes out because of Aren's selfish behavior. So he's just grabbing his white guy's crotch repeatedly. And then we see it again in like a flashback. And then we get it a 4th time with that same magical Negro telling his white guy, like, you should also be grabbing my crotch. Like, I just feel like I don't understand why we spent time on that and we didn't address like very real, like provocative things. I don't know. This movie feels scared, like it's scared.
It is placating in a way. And to me, a PG-13 rating is always placating.
I was very frustrated with Aren's character. Like, he's told, your actions will jeopardize everyone's magic. And this society is really here to protect all the black people in the country. And you're worried about this Lizzie girl? I don't know. I needed a little bit something different and more to understand his actions. He just seems so selfish. Even if he didn't agree with how the society is approaching these issues, I would have preferred that his character challenged them. Maybe he, like within the group, helps people like the president evolve. But instead, you jeopardize everything for this girl, and then he gets kicked out. So Nicole Byer banishes him from the group, which means that he's supposed to get his memory erased. So David Alan Grier is about to erase it. And he's like, well, are you sure? Why are you asking him that? You were kicked out. Wouldn't Nicole Byer have to let him back in?
Right.
And then he tells him, are you sure? Because if you leave the society, you won't be able to take care of yourself. But then I'm like, but aren't there millions of black people in the country who are fending for themselves?
Uh-huh.
And this kid was doing just fine. No one's bothering his ass.
That are thriving, not surviving.
Right. And he lives in like a nice loft in downtown LA. So why are you saying this to him?
Yeah, it's like the dots aren't connected where somebody needs to have the conversation that things have changed and this society of magical Negroes is actually living in a sunken place, kind of.
What's the director's name?
Kobi Libii.
Sorry, girl. I mean, I had read bad reviews and I thought I want to watch it for myself.
Of course.
Also,
always.
the trailer, I thought, felt better than the reviews I was reading. But yeah, this is not it.
I agree, but I also feel bad because the intention is there and it's a place of conversation if we're really reaching for something positive to say here. But there, David Alan Grier, I think, is quite good. The scene where he relates the memory about his father, it's like that is the one moment in this film that felt like, here we are. This has arrived.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, I mean, even like, to me, like the easiest approach would have been to have this more mature black man and this younger black man with this power and influence, like they've assumed this role as a magical Negro, and how one is teaching the other and how we're evolving and how racism has changed. This film is not addressing that at all.
And how would both black and white people have been conditioned to a degree to
This movie really is just about how to keep white people happy. And in the end, the main character, Aren, is like, no, I need to start speaking up for myself. It just feels so disconnected.
But then it's like you are giving it a title that is, I'm assuming, off-putting to a certain generation of white people that won't be seeing it. So why not go in? Like, why not? I would have loved to see the Issa Rae script where she's really allowed to let loose with this idea.
What would you give this movie?
2.
I would give this film 2 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.